But at this stage, I'll withdraw the motion on the books, leaving it open to a further resolution. Thank you.
All right. And do we have, sorry.
And that amendment that Ben and I were working on, obviously, if there's no initial motion, we'll just make a new motion. We'll withdraw our amendment as well.
All right.
Okay.
And I understand you've got some wording through to Dave, but before we go to that, I just want to get some clarification from you, Karen, in regards to the $100,000 from prior year surplus,
Yes.
what that is specifically for, because I think we all got a little confused about, is that what pays for the business case development?
No,
What's
it
that
did
for
morph through the
specifically?
conversation, didn't it? Councillors, you might recall that when we had this discussion back in May, and you instructed us to continue to support economic development, you did say that if we needed funding to help pay for economic development activities, to come back to you. And that's what this is. This is to keep economic development activities going. And we're looking to prepare high-level profiles of the region's economic geographies, and alongside that, a decision framework to identify roles and responsibilities for those economic geographies and to help people develop their strategies and implementation plans. And this will be useful for all of those economic development entities that we have throughout our region.
Councillor Nicol, would you like to
Yes,
put forward your suggestion?
I'm just going to move that council progresses with business case for option 3, noting it doesn't exclude option 2, eventuating in future. Council instructs staff to prepare a business case for consideration through the draft annual plan. And lastly, the council agrees to allocate, so this is taken straight from the staff recommendation, up to $100,000 from prior year surplus to inform regional development activities that Karen just mentioned. There's a few extra words there, but it was in the paper.
So that's moved by Councillor Nicol. Do we have a second for that? Councillor Strange? All right, we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Madam Chair.
Sorry.
Or
Yes.
would you like it taken in parts? It has parts, but I was just wondering.
All right.
Can I just ask the co-host, which directive will that come out of, the 100,000?
Sorry.
Which directive will that come out of, the surplus for the 100,000?
It's not a directorate. It's surplus funds that council holds.
General.
Yeah, but in the finances, it's got the different directives that the surplus is getting allocated to. I just wondered which one. Well, no. Oh, it's unallocated.
All right. Well done, councillors. Thank you for your attention and your energy and the thorough nature that you gave to that debate. I really appreciate it. Okay. We shall now move on to.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Just a query around what information we're going to give back to the supporters of option 2. Oh, sorry, the proposers of option 2 that have now left the room.
We'll task Karen with those communications.
Thank you.
And as was noted in the motion, there is nothing that prevents option 2 from coming back in front of this council at a future date. All right. So now we are on item, 7.1, which is the Hauraki Gulf Forum minutes. This is just receiving these minutes. Is that correct? All right. Do I have a mover? Councillor Marr, and a second, and Councillor Hughes. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Health and safety. So this is item 7.2. This is on page 61 of your agenda. And we've got Stu Brown. Thanks for hanging around, Stu. Much appreciated.
Me. So I'll take the report as read and I'll note a few key points as we go through. You'll see there that we have had a number of incidents this month, and looking at that, most of those have been minor. And incident, I guess we still continue to see some issues out there on the road due to other drivers outside of Waikato Regional Council. So we've just been continuing that message to be careful when people are out there. And you may have seen that there was a power lines noted in the box on page 3 of the report. And it was just to note that that was a low voltage line that was hanging and found by a staff member and was proactively maintained. So there was nothing too serious about that. As we move through the report, it's good to see under the sick leave that our sick leave starting to reduce again. Thankfully, that period of 9.8 has reduced. And moving through to the employee assistance, we've talked about that a number of times, and I think that in the last meeting we discussed the utilisation and whether that was getting concerning, getting to the upper end of the 7 to 15%, and we're now at 14.8%. So I thought I would make note of that. That's due to us having a relaunch and the new initiative around Rongoa Māori offering that we've got, and a number of staff taking that up to trial it. So we'll really get to see where that number subsides to, hopefully over the next month or two following that trial of that new service, which is great. And you'll see in the wellbeing section that the wellbeing team continue to be quite active across the organisation and have a number of initiatives going on there, which is great to see. So that's some of the key points. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Councillor Smith?
Yeah, just being pedantic, Madam Chair, under bullet point 2, WorkSafe carried out the first sentencing. They don't sentence anybody. It's prosecution.
Yeah.
As the court does the sentencing, which is noted in the second paragraph. So
Yep.
Just being
Yep.
with my background being pedantic.
You?
Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Dunbar Smith. Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, Stu, given the initiatives that are being driven in Wellington at the moment in relation to working from home, could I ask that we get presented, I don't want to know about it now, working from home policy, and also maybe, if it's possible, if it's being recorded, and could it be reported on as part of this health and safety report?
Yeah, I can get that for you for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Dunbar Smith?
Yeah, not being pedantic, but just being lighthearted. Do senior managers such as yourself take part in the video stretching sessions during morning tea time?
Maybe councillors should, eh? Maybe we should have stretching sessions.
Yeah. It's no joke. I have a sore back at the minute and the stretches are working well, so it's much appreciated. There's quite a few people who are taking that up. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? We do have a mover for the report in Councillor Mahuta, a second in Councillor Nicol. There's no other questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Stu. Now on to item 7.3. This is page 68. The draft financial performance to 30 June 2024 and request for budget carryover. And we've got Janine Becker to take us through this. Janine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this matter is actually a recommendation to Council from the Finance and Services Committee based on our draft end of year financial performance results. So we've approached this slightly differently this time of representing the Finance and Services Committee report to Council so that you've got the full information on those matters. I do note that the numbers in the report haven't been updated since the committee. We're obviously still going through the process of finalising year-end results and audit. So the report covers off our draft financial performance results, which has seen us end the year in a favourable position. Against that favourable outcome, there are a number of requests for the carryover of unspent budget into the 24-25 financial year to allow planned work to be completed. and those are set out in summary in the recommendation and more detail within the report. And I guess noting within here that even after those carryovers have been approved, we are currently reporting an unallocated surplus of just over $6 million. My suggestion would be a conversation on that matter is picked up through the development of the 25-26 annual plan, which is obviously the next item on the agenda. So, Madam Chair, probably happy to leave it at that and take any questions that there may be from councillors.
So sorry, just to be clear, is there an aspect of this that you're saying is going to be discussed in our next agenda item?
So through the chair, we've just referenced the fact that in the accumulation of prior year surpluses means that council has just over $6 million per the numbers reported here available to it to consider. That we've heard today in terms of a call on those surplus funds. They are available to council to consider at any point in time. But it would seem appropriate that as we start developing the 2025-26 annual plan in particular, that consideration is given to how that may be utilised.
I've got Councillor Strange, then Councillor Smith. Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Janine, for the report. Yeah, as someone who sits on the Finance Committee and the Deputy Chair of that committee, yeah, I think we had a robust conversation at the committee, so I'm happy to move that report.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. A couple of questions. What assurance can we have that the carry forwards, several $1 million worth, will not affect the ability of the current work program? That is to say that you carry forward, it compounds the amount of work that needs to be done within the next financial year. I want to hear about what the strategy is to ensure that those carry forwards are completed and that they do not obstruct the work plan for this year. And secondly, comment on the 6 million surplus. That's a huge amount of money. And I certainly would like to see some discussion, if it is annual plan time, workshops or whatever, about returning some of that to the current ratepayers, not put into a fund for X amount of years or draw-ons or Johnny-come-lately plans to do this or that. So that certainly needs more discussion, but I certainly think that the ratepayers of today need to have some consideration towards that. So can I go back to the question then as to what impact these carry forwards will have and whether the program of works will be delivered? Thank you.
So through the chair, in considering putting these carryover requests to council, there are a number of criteria that we consider. A key one of those is that there's no provision for those works in the new financial year, that the work is actually committed, and that staff have the capacity to deliver on it. So those have been tested with directors for their areas in terms of each of those requests meeting those criteria. This will be part of the monitoring that we do through our regular quarterly forecasting to ensure that we are on track with that. In terms of the size of the surplus, that's acknowledged in terms of it is a substantially higher surplus than we have previously achieved. I had included in the report for the committee a review of some of the key factors behind it and what we had taken into account in terms of future budgets to try and check that to start with, but to give the committee and council some confidence that we were, trying to predict and project some of that into future budget setting.
Thank you.
If I could just probably reiterate what Janine has said, Councillor Smith, that we all, ELT did, but I put a lot of scrutiny on directors that you were going to be able to spend this money, and it wouldn't impact the current work programs, then I have an assurance from directors that was going to be the case. And I'd just also note that that the surplus, a fair amount of that, as in the paper, is due to income. The income side of the ledger.
Councillor Mahuta.
Kia ora, firstly, thank you to the committee for the robust report and to Janine and the team. I'll second the resolution as it's put here by Councillor Strange. My question to the committee is if just to help us on the way to annual plan, and I like Councillor Smith, assume that any action on that surplus will be something we address through the annual planning process. So just confirmation of that from you, Janine. And then the last one from me is, could the non-financial reports come to council, please, by the committee, or any findings from them? Thank you.
So through the chair, in terms of consideration of the unallocated surplus funds through the annual plan, that is definitely part of the conversation. I think, as I say, in the next report on the agenda, we have flagged that matter for council consideration as we go into that budget setting process. So absolutely our intention. In terms of the non-financial performance, definitely. You will see that being reported back formally as part of the annual report that you would be adopting at your October meeting. But to give councillors a heads up on that, we'll note that as well of coming forward.
Thank you. Hughes. Thanks, Councillor Mahuta. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I guess as Chair, I have to take responsibility for this surplus. But seriously, I think two things. Number one, I think the Chief Executive and the staff have done a great job in terms of delivering the services that were required of council, and in response to Councillor Mahuta's question around the service reporting, they, from recollection, were all achieved ahead of last year's outcomes. And so that's why I'm comfortable that services have been delivered to at least the level that they were previously. And I'm not aware of any complaints about non-deliverables, apart maybe some of the catchments, but that's a separate issue. And yeah, I'd really just like at this point to recognise the effort that's gone into achieving this surplus to Chris and his team, because I think we have kept the tension on, we have put the pressure on as councillors, and I'm very happy to report, as is in this report, that they've delivered. It is still subject to audit, but I don't expect it to change too much, if at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Yes. So the $6 million represents a possibly 3.5% rate reduction potential. And as Councillor Downard and I have spoken about, and others spoken about in the past, concern about an 8.6% rate increase coming. The other issue I've got is that there's $1.5 million rates penalty income higher than normal. So rates are going up, and then we're penalising people for not paying them, which gives us an extra 1.5 million. So there's a little circuit in there that, yeah, I'd prefer to see rates come down.
Any comment? No. All right. Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
my only comment was to have that income, they did pay with the penalty.
But didn't pay, penalised.
All right. We've got a mover and a seconder for this motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. On to 7.4. This is on page 91 of your agenda. The 2025-26 annual plan timeline and assumptions. Welcome, Jane.
Just stay in support.
Just keep the seat warm there. Nice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. This report is to provide an update on the 25-26 annual plan. particularly drawing your attention to the key issues and assumptions that are being considered in the preparation of the plan. Through this annual plan, Council has signalled the requirement to amend the 24-34 LTP. This is primarily to enable the establishment of a regional rate for public transport to be implemented from 1st of July 2025, and will also include the development of a new remission policy in relation to the primary industry compliance rate. As Council will be aware, amending the LTP triggers the need for a special consultative procedure with public consultation timetabled for April 2025. Our process is outlined in the timeline, which is shown in item 18 of the report. So this annual plan will represent year 2 of the LTP. The LTP proposes a 8.6% rate increase to current ratepayers for year 2. A key driver of the increase is the switch to the regional rating for public transport. Although there will be an increase to the rates revenue for this council, ratepayers should see a corresponding reduction in their rates to territorial authorities.
PA didn't go
Since the adoption of the LTP, new information is now available that will influence the 8.6% increase that was proposed. This includes the release of the National Land Transport Plan, including the removal of projects within the Hamilton Metro Spatial Plan and new public transport services, as well as reduced funding for the road safety program. There's also the pause to the rollout of freshwater farm plans and the confirmation of funding for flood resilience projects through the before the deluge. The exact impact of these changes has still been assessed, but they will contribute to reducing the rates revenue requirement that has been signalled for year 2 in the LTP. With all these issues being considered, the preparation of the annual plan is now underway. A council workshop on the draft budget is scheduled for the 10th of December, and this will be an opportunity to provide feedback before formally considering the budget on the 11th of February 2025. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for your attention.
Councillor Smith, and then Councillor Dunbar-Smith, and Councillor Nicol. Councillor Smith.
I appreciate the meeting in December, but is there an opportunity for councillors to have some sort of discussion about what they want to see changed or looked at in the annual plan? We've got to go out to consultative process anyway, but the reality is to come back when ELT and everybody else has developed it, we start cutting down the time frame. So is there anything that can be shared with councillors so that we can have a preliminary think about what's there that we can at least consider? Because getting to December, then we break for a month, it cuts down the ability of council. I appreciate the LTP was only a few months ago, but I just wonder whether there's an opportunity for councillors to have an early look at things.
You mean earlier than the workshop on the 10th of December?
Yes.
So through the chair, the approach that we've typically taken for the annual plan, particularly first one following an LTP, is to look for those key drivers that have impacted the plan that council had set out. So we haven't done that previously. If there are other matters that outside of the ones that staff have identified within this report, then I guess there's an opportunity to raise those here today, or we could look for some additional time for a check-in with elected members. I mean, obviously from today, the matter that isn't reflected in the report is around the regional economic development strategy. So, regional economic development or not, So reflecting that through the process as well. But if there are matters that councillors are aware of now that they want to make staff aware of, as I said earlier in the meeting, staff are already starting work on the annual plan. Currently, they're in the middle of it. So
it's the likes of that economic development stuff that we
Yeah.
can just put in here as a placeholder
Yes.
because we don't know
Yep.
what we.
absolutely,
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
definitely.
Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Yes, just a quick question about the National Land Transport Plan and that council's getting less than anticipated through the LTP. Will that have an impact on needing to increase our rates from 8.6? What consequence will that have?
So through the chair, that will reduce down from the 8.6%. The program will be smaller. We don't have the exact dollars on that. I think there was some presentation through the Regional Land Transport Committee earlier this month, so members of that committee might have a better idea. I think we had always signalled when we were developing the LTP budget that that was at a maximum level, and any approvals below that would reduce down from that 8.6 anyway. So obviously we're in that position now with confirmed government funding.
So we're not planning to spend more, given that government is spending less. We're just actually dropping back again.
Just to add to that, though, there was a discussion, I think it was at the recent meeting between HCC and WIC councillors, where it was suggested we might want to think about maintaining our contribution that had been in to make up for, to do something in the light that national funding had decreased and it couldn't happen. That wasn't supported in any way, but I can imagine more requests like that coming along.
Thanks. Yeah, when I read this, I also noticed, so thanks for the question, Noel, that this would be our main opportunity to feed in any things for councillors to have input before the ELT go ahead. Obviously, the economic development one you've mentioned, and the linkage with the spatial planning in particular. I just recall we knew less back when we made the long-term plan, but we did make a decision on the pace of spatial plan implementation. Just keen to understand, I don't know if it's revisit and change the pace, but understand what our options are to make sure that the spatial planning work is happening at the optimum pace to support the ED work or to support whatever else has changed in all these spaces. So that's a key interest of mine. And then leading on from the consequences of the National Land Transport Plan funding decision, I've understood from my conversation with Phil King yesterday that the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee on the 1st of November meeting is going to consider some options around what to do with the Metro Spatial Plan business case, since that was subject to not receiving co-funding from the National Land Transport Plan. Not putting on new services in Hamilton for the next 3 years, which has 80% of our buses, and also not working towards a plan of how to do improved services over the next while is not acceptable to me. And so I just want, I'll be at that PT subcommittee to help influence that, but I'm just so mindful that the decision ultimately is at this table. And so I spoken with Phil about maybe using those workshops that are coming up on the PT rating to continue to educate us on all of the stuff so that we're ready to make that decision and don't have something like this morning kind of thing taking ages. And on top of that, should we not come to a solution with some of those other things that are more official, the community transport space, I'm keen to understand whether there are any opportunities to do something further or improved in that in light of those NLTP decisions, to allow community members to put on their own services in light of us not being able to put on GoBus type, bigger services. So perhaps something we can explore through those PT rating workshops, or if the ELT could just keep in mind through their workshopping. Those are my main 2-3 things.
All right, if there's nothing else, can I get a mover in Councillor Downard and a second in Councillor Hughes that report be received. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Um, all right, now we are moving on to 7.6. Yes, 7.6. This is on page 96 of your agenda. This is in relation to our proposed workshop practices. And Democracy Dave, you'll be speaking to this.
Absolutely. Afternoon again, everyone. In order to expedite this matter, I'm happy to take this report as read. It's fairly straightforward, I think, and just address any questions that you may have.
I've got Councillor Dunbar Smith, then Councillor Nichol, then Councillor Smith. Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Yes, it's probably for Janine more than anyone, but I see that we have a council workshop draft budget review on the 10th of December. Will that be covered by the open clauses in this new approach?
Given the way the staff recommendations currently worded, then yes, this would take effect essentially immediately.
Sorry, I just need to get you a mic. There we go. So my understanding, though, is with this new proposal that there is still, we would still be utilizing the public excluded criteria for
Yes.
certain workshops. So should that pertain to any of the workshops going forward, should this motion pass, that will be the process we'd go through to determine whether or not a workshop was open.
Okay, because obviously if we're discussing draft budgets, I'm not sure how much of that is in public or private, or, I mean, we haven't come across this before, so yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so on page 125 of the agenda, in the appendix, it does talk about exclusion of the public, that, workshops must be open by default, and that where they're closed, they need to comply with the relevant legislation. So that test would need to be considered if it were to be excluded. So it does open that possibility.
Did you have any further questions? No,
Madam
I've
Chair.
got Councillor Nichol, and then I've got Councillor Smith and Councillor Hughes. Councillor Nichol. I just need to get Jen a mic there. Noel, Chris, there we go. And
Thank you. After the workshop we had about this and seeing it written up, I think the staff done a really good job, and I'd be happy to move it. I think that opening up our workshops is a really, really good thing to do, and having a way to assess which ones are open and not. There's a point there in paragraph 15 about democracy monitoring, how much additional resourcing they might need to do this properly. But I suppose that will be another topic that can be looked at through the annual plan, just to put it on the list. Yeah.
For the last little bit longer than 6 months, Democracy have been supporting the majority of the workshops.
Yeah.
So in having a presence here, it adds on an administrative front and back to that in terms of distributing the materials, whereas that was done on an ad hoc basis by the facilitators of workshops, maintaining the website recordings and so on. But we'll keep an eye on that and see how we go.
I appreciate that, because ultimately investing in the transparency of how we do our work to me is a really positive thing, because we often complain people don't know what regional council does and all that stuff. And so anything that in that direction is the right thing to do, I think.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. This is where we can say all the right things in reality. I'm absolutely pushed for transparency, but the reality, the way this recommendation is written, and this is not a personal criticism, Dave, the way this is written, we might as well have meetings, because they're all but meetings. And the only thing that's different is that we don't make decisions in workshops. But if we're doing agendas and we're doing reports and we're doing everything else, they are meetings. So we might as well just turn our workshops into meetings, and we can make the decision quicker. Don't have to wait another week or two before it comes back for another committee. I'm talking probably all faulty tower stuff, I suppose, but or something I'm trying to think of, but I can't. The way this is written up, when I read it, I thought, God, we've over formalised it. You know, just to me, it's just open it up, broadcast it, and carry on as we were. This is really taking it way beyond as far as the process goes. So be careful what you ask for, is what I'm trying to say probably, in that I have no problem absolutely and support transparency and openness, but the way this is written, we might as well have meetings. And therefore, have we got it right? Would my challenge to everybody. Thank you.
I'd actually be quite keen to review it after a set time anyway. Maybe just a note for democracy to consider bringing it to you after a good amount of time. 6 months.
She pinched my bike.
No. Everybody's getting desperate.
Nah.
It's,
Hey,
it's
look,
20 past 2.
Yeah, look, I've got to go too, but it's, look, happy with the report. It's a well-written report. My personal view hasn't changed that Tom. I think the Ombudsman's getting towards they've been a meeting, and it's going to drive us into having more secret little catch-ups with staff instead of so it's, yeah, exactly. And anyway, but look, I don't have an issue with the way the report, the way of which we've been pushed, but I was really cynical at the way that the current government's pushing some of these legislation amendments through without even giving the parliament to have a say. It's sort of a bit two-faced in some ways, but
It would be nice, I believe, if the transparency that we are called upon to
Yeah.
deliver was equally called upon at a
Exactly,
national
yeah,
level. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Just in response to that last comment from Councillor Kneebone, there's a very good article by Audrey Young today. You might want to read it. It's on that topic. Then, without knowing exactly what you're referring to in terms of the finances and the budgeting, the annual report for the council I would expect to be out before our annual plan process. So all this information, financial information you've been privy to today, will be available to the public, I assume. So nothing to hide there.
Sorry, it just then raises the question that Noel's raised. So if we've got a draft budget that's out in November and a council workshop to review the draft budget in December, but we don't make decisions till the budget meeting in February, does the workshop, I mean, that's what's the purpose of a workshop? If you can't make decisions, you're effectively running the same process in a way.
Oh, I think it's that, so my understanding is there's staff prepare a draft budget, we provide feedback and direction. Is that, are they on the right track? Is there a slight tact change that we might like them to explore and develop and provide additional information? No, it's providing direction and feedback on the level of information that is being collated to inform our decision-making process.
I can possibly add to that a little bit, in that the Ombudsman did address the narrowing down of options within workshops. And like Chair Pamela has just said, while a decision isn't made, the use of a workshop to narrow down those options is acceptable, and the Ombudsman therefore believes its transparency assists the public in seeing how we went from 10 options to 3 options to a decision.
Okay, I do have a mover and a seconder for this, but I'll come to you, Councillor Marr.
Yeah, just a quick technical question, Dave. How long will the recording stay up on our website?
What we've been tending to do is we're popping them on YouTube where they remain indefinitely if you can find them in there. The web pages we tend to do on a triennial basis. So previously we were hosting all of the recordings and materials in-house, and it took up a bit of room. So we were clearing it at the start of each triennium, and we're probably going to look and try and keep the last triennium and then the current one. When the next one starts, we'll clear out that previous one.
So that should be the same for the workshops. It'll all
Workshop
that same
and
space.
same for the agendas and minutes for meetings as well.
Thank
I
you.
hope you have more memory available than our Outlook mailboxes.
Who was the seconder?
The seconder is Councillor Mahuta online. All right, so we've got a mover and a seconder. I just do want to come back to you though, Jen, because you had mentioned that you might like a review built into
Yeah,
this.
but I don't know if we need to have a resolution for it because
Okay.
it
Good
just.
stuff.
it's-
All those
it's an
in
act.
favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, councillors, we do need to go into public excluded because we do have a matter to deal with there. So we've got a mover and Councillor Hughes, a second and Councillor Smith to move into public excluded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay, one
I'll give
moment,
you a
please.
moment.